Hey, morning, ladies.
Morning.
We have
Morning.
like a we have a
Morning.
full house.
Morning.
We have people who aren't even on camera yet. Jill is here. Chrissy's here. Chrissy, say hi. Wait,
Hello.
do we?
Hi.
Oh, there she is. Hey, Chrissy. And Pearl. Pearl doesn't get to join us very often. Welcome.
Good morning.
One of the things that we were talking about, and we realized that we never really addressed on our podcast, was the thing that probably causes us the most grief and drama certainly for the longest time since we've been around is Pennsylvania's Mental Health Consent to Treat Act. And since Tracy is our resident Act 65 of 2020 expert, Tracy, you want to get us started hitting some of the high points on that? Nothing like putting her on the spot first thing in the morning.
Oh my God. Seriously, yeah. Like, I know that this topic is something that
You're welcome, hon.
absolutely love talking about, but thanks for putting me on the spot. You know, mental health consent law in Pennsylvania, I think, has been something that has been a complete struggle since we started, with statewide. And we receive so many calls from parents calling from the ER, calling after, they were told that once their child turns 14, they can make all decisions. And that's literally how most of the parents call and start talking to us about, like, what? My kid who's 14 can make all the decisions from here on out. And and we try to talk to them, and that's not what the law says. Mental health consent law really is. It was created by a mom to allow her daughter to be able to go get mental health treatment on her own without having mom's permission. I think that there's a lot of families, that might not think that a child may need mental health services. So, they might not agree that their child can go see a therapist. So the child can go see a therapist between the ages of 14 and 17, up until their 18th birthday. But providers in Pennsylvania seem to think that this law really is giving the youth, the young adult, more power than it actually does. I literally was just in the urgent care with my daughter last week, and they want my daughter to talk. She's 17, but my daughter also has an intellectual disability, and so I do have to step in a lot. And so the nurse was talking, and my daughter's looking at me going, "Tell her." I'm like, "No, you tell her." But she started to even incite the law incorrectly. And so I said, "Let me tell you." I said, "Let me write this law down for you." So I think that just as an organization, we really do try to work with families, work with providers, work with the state to try to make sure that this law is understood correctly. Because it is definitely something that parents struggle with even before
just to hit the really high
14.
points on it. It's Act 65 of 2020. It's a Pennsylvania specific law. There are similar laws in other states. If you're in other states, look up your own law. But Act 65 of 2020 allows children the right to consent to their own mental health treatment once they turn 14 without being worried that someone will override that consent. It does not, and I can't emphasize this enough, it does not allow children to refuse treatment if a parent says they want the child to have treatment. It's specifically on mental health. So doctors, who are seeing children for other things, saying, "Oh, your child, once your child turns 14, they could sign for all of their medical treatment." That's not the case at all. Although we do encourage certainly parents to help their children transition, understand the medical system, be part of their treatment at all stages, just to help them understand it once they get older. But it does not allow children to refuse treatment. I have no idea how that misunderstanding ever got out there. Parents, from the time your child is born until the day before they turn 18, still have the right to give permission and consent for their children's medical, including mental health treatment. Once someone says yes to mental health treatment, no one can override that consent. So how do we tell parents, because we've been doing everything we can. We've talked to the legislators who wrote the law. We've talked to the state. We've talked to as lawyers, everybody we can, and we are working on it. But in the meantime, how can we help families manage this crisis when you get to the ER and you're told, yes, your child who is having a mental health crisis can refuse to come in and get treatment? What do we tell people?
I think we need to, just like what we're doing now, is keep talking about it. And for all of the people that we've worked with, I am sure that they are sharing with friends, neighbors, family, like, oh my goodness, wait till your child turns 14. You won't believe what may happen to you in an emergency setting, in a crisis setting. And that's when most people are finding out. So I think we really need to talk to each other and share that knowledge. I wish more than anything that it came from your PCP, your pediatrician. The biggest thing is there's a lot of things that we set an age on. We say when they turn 16, they can possibly get a driver's license. When they're 18, they're old enough to vote. 21, you are able to purchase alcohol and consume it. So, like, there's these age groups that we kind of teach our kids about, and it's common knowledge. We need this law in our state to be common knowledge among our parents, that they know this is coming, that it can't be used against them. And this law is not a bad thing. It's a wonderful thing. It was meant to protect our children who needed mental health help and couldn't get it because a parent overrode what they wanted. So just like share it, keep talking about it. You know, that's one of our number one calls I think we get where parents need support with is understanding it and how to break it down.
And I will say that people get stuck on, they hear what they want to hear, like in that moment of crisis, that moment of an emergency, or they've heard in support groups 14, 14. So all of a sudden they think 14, they forget about everything after that. They just think that, okay, at 14, I heard that my kid can have consent to do whatever they want. They just hear that. So I know when I talk to my families, I give them our tip sheet that we have on our website, but sometimes I even have to break it down and physically write it out for them in an email and just break it down into steps so they can really understand. And in another session, we talk about that. So it's for those of us that are in it, we understand it more than the average mom that isn't dealing with this all the time, mom or dad or caregiver. So I think breaking it down for them and talking about it, like Melissa said, a lot. Mm.
I think it's really important to have the conversation before the 14th birthday. Start talking, at 12 and 13, and also talking to the young adult on what is coming up. What does it mean when a provider gives you a paper and has you sign everything without any explanation? That's another thing. That's a big pet peeve of mine. It's like the providers just hand out documents and say, okay, you're 14, so now you can sign without explanation. So as a parent, having those conversations with your young adults, and also having those documents, like, both Melissa and Pearl said, having our tip sheet in hand. I remember when my daughter went to a partial program, I had our tip sheet in my folder ready to give to the person on intake. So because they were going to have her sign. And so, luckily at that time, they didn't have her sign. But I think that it's proactive measures. No, before you go into a provider's office or before you do something. I know sometimes you can't do
So
that because of
Jill
crisis,
and
but
Christy, I want to bring you
having that
guys in on this
conversation
because your
before they're
kiddos are
14.
younger. And you know, you know now that your younger children have some mental health challenges. So you are in a situation where you could prepare your children the way many families really cannot, because for so many of us, we have no idea that our children are having any kind of mental health challenge sometimes until that first crisis hits. So because you work here and you hear us complain about it all the time and the challenges that come up, are you doing anything to, I know your kiddos are little, but are you doing anything to kind of lay some groundwork with them on, talking about mental health and having open conversations?
Go ahead, Chrissy.
Oh no, yes and no. I was gonna chime in before I couldn't get a spot in, but when you guys were talking about, I wish it was in the doctor's office and things like that. I think Tracy, you've done some trainings for like hospital systems, and I think that's a huge step in the right direction, getting the providers like on the right page so that they're giving the parents correct information. Because I know like as a parent, when I go to the doctor, I usually take what they say like pretty much at face value. So if they tell me a law's a lie, I just assume that they're giving me correct information. So you doing that, I think is helpful. And with my oldest, that's the one that struggles the most. She's 11 now, so we're a couple years out. She is afraid of everyone. She won't even order like her own food in a restaurant. So I don't know that we'll run into much of that issue because I think she'll want me to like hold her hand through her entire life. But the youngest also struggles, and I think that he's like a rebel. He'll be calling Jill before he would want me in there. So I do probably have to lay some groundwork with him because he is struggling even at 6. So I think we're gonna have to make sure that he is like aware that we're on the same team and that we have to make decisions together, so that he's rebellious just by nature. So I think he might try to do whatever I say, like the opposite of.
Oh, I know that one.
Yeah. Well, and I'm the same way. Like, so I have the big age groups in my kids, and I've always, because I grew up with a brother who had mental health issues, and it was never discussed. Back then, it was hush hush. Nobody knew. My parents were embarrassed, so they didn't want to get the help. My brother just was the bad kid. I was always the problem kid. And now I look back and I'm like, oh my goodness, like I could diagnose him with like 10 things right now, And so now I kind of like feel bad because we had a really rough life because I had a brother who had challenges that, like I said, back then, you just punished them, you hit them, you just took things away, did whatever. So I've always been kind of like very open to my kids about things and talked with them because I have a 29-year-old who has always had different feelings and issues and challenges and always felt very different from everybody else. So like you said, we're kind of on the same team here. Like if he came to me and wanted something, he was in therapy for years because he wanted it. He's having those feelings, and at that age they don't come to mommy sometimes. So I've always been very open with if they needed something, coming to me. And even if I didn't feel some of it might be a little crazy in my eyes, but hey, if that's what they're feeling and that's what they're thinking. So we have kind of talked about, we've never talked about Act 65, obviously. But we've always talked about what everybody needs. I have a lot of kids. We have a lot of personalities. We have a big family. So everybody needs something. I always tell my clients too, you know what, just because you're not diagnosed doesn't mean that there's not something going on. Like you're not weird. You're not different. Like everybody has something going on. So you know what, if we could all just understand that that's the normal. I hate the word normal, but that's the normal. Everybody has something. And if we could make it where it's not such a hush hush shame thing, I think these kids would be so much more inclined to come to us. And I do feel bad for the kids that don't have that person that they could come to and say, hey, listen, I'm feeling some kind of way, like I'm feeling different. I would like somebody to talk to. I would like some, therapy. My 17-year-old has recently come tell me about that. And I've told you guys all kind of know a little bit about him. So, I mean, I would never ever want to like shame that. So if that's what he needed, it wouldn't be a battle here. So we've done that talk. And then I have a 9-year-old who has a whole lot going on, and he knows it. And he'd wear a t-shirt that says it because he knows there's nothing wrong with him. And I wouldn't want him any other way. And that's him. He takes it for what it is, and love me or hate me, so because he's not ashamed, because we've never let him be ashamed of it. So I think that's a big difference. If it's brought up and made aware.
You're going to make me cry talking about him because I love him. He's the best. He really is. I'm like teary-eyed because he seriously is the best kid, and there isn't anything wrong with him. I love Riker.
Yeah, he is. I'm not going to lie.
So I think I can't, and I'm sorry if I can't attribute this to the right person. I don't remember if it was Tracy or if it was Melissa who started telling families. I think we've started really pushing to say to families, if you are in the doctor's office, a therapist office, the ER, absolutely insist that you sign all paperwork as well as your child. If they want your child's name on it, that's fine. But there should still be a place on the form for like a guardian or a parent. So you sign as well with them. If you are in the emergency room, the therapist's office, whatever with your child, you sign right along with them. I know when Cheryl was here, Cheryl had a great story that she shared about the doctor insisting that her child sign for treatment. And she said, hold up, do you know what you just signed? And the was like, no, I was just told to sign, so I signed. And she said, all right, we're going to rip that up. We're going to talk about what you signed before you sign it. I love that. That's something great to do when you have the time, when you have the ability. It's so important nowadays. We think nothing of clicking those like agree boxes on anything, Google, any social media app we're getting on. We agree to everything because the terms and conditions are so long. But definitely make sure your children know that they have every right to ask what they're signing, to be told. And then if they have the, like if they could read it, they could say, I'm going to let my mom sign this time. We're going to take it home. We're going to read it. I honestly can't picture any 14-year-old saying that. But I think that if at the doctor's office, they insist that you sign as a parent, you can say, we'd like a copy of that. And when you get home, you could look at it with your child and cover it. So absolutely, this is the time to be that overbearing, obnoxious parent you've always kind of secretly maybe wanted to be. I'm going to sign that if my child's going to get treatment. My name's going on it too. And to do your best to talk to your child about things in advance. When you get to the doctor's office, this is what they're going to ask for. And so once you turn 14, you're allowed to this, you're allowed to that. So do your best, if you can, to prepare your children in advance. If you know they have something like ADHD or anxiety, it's a good conversation to have in the car on the way to the doctor's office to at least remind them. Tracy and Melissa, Pearl, do you have any other tips to share?
Well, I wanted to share the families that we work with. We have heard some really awful things that have happened to parents and their children in the middle of a crisis. And if you try to picture this teenager who is prior to this ordeal that you're going through, before this crisis, before they were struggling, you had a great relationship. Now they've become a surly teenager. Maybe you're not their favorite person and you're insisting that they go to the doctor. And they're like, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not going. It's you. It's not me. You get there and they say, oh, you can come over here privately. We need to speak to you on your own without your parent. Many times that child who is particularly mad at that parent because they're making them do that agrees to it, not understanding what that could mean, because the place where you're at does not understand the law. they take the child by themselves. They are speaking to them about what's been going on. This person is in crisis. They probably can't remember the last time they ate, let alone when this all began. You know, they need their parent, they need their caregiver giving this information. And I think the people that have suffered because of this law, the misunderstanding of it, never seen it coming, that they would pin a child against their parent at the most crucial time where they needed help. And I think that's the part that kind of pulls the rug out. We have had a family take their child to the hospital. They had to stay. They go home, they call to do a check-in, and they're like, we are not allowed to tell you whether they're here or not. You're the one that just dropped them off. You absolutely know they're there. But because of this confusion with the law, now they won't even talk to you about what's going on. And like 14, that is so young. And then we have our children that could be 18, could be 20, and they don't understand. They don't have the capacity to understand what is going on. And it just, I feel so bad for the parents that get put in this situation that they're learning about this law in the middle of a crisis, because it's just terrible for that, on top of everything else, that you get divided from your child and knowing medications, treatment, outcome, giving a history. Even if I had, like, you know, my 30-year-old give her health history, I'm honestly sure half of it would be left out, and, you know, most of that would be very important.
I
could go on and on about how devastating this law is to some of our parents. In the situation like that you had just said, you know, I think that two things. One, that was Christina was saying about having the parent sign with the young adult is so important, because part of this law is also who controls your medical records. And that part of the law also gets very twisted, that if the youth signs the documentation, they can control what is released to mom and dad. And so in the situation where the parent is dropping off their child at the hospital and then goes home and calls to see what's, you know, happening, and they say, I can't release that information because the youth has said, I don't want that information to be released. So it's very critical that parents are right there trying to, you know, be a part. They, just like an IEP team, they are part of the team in that aspect. And so, yes, I feel like that part of the law is just so heartbreaking when a
So I
parent
want
has not even been told
sorry, I
that
want to be
their
really clear.
child is
The
okay,
law is
maybe after a
wonderful.
suicide attempt.
The law is
Because it,
simple and easy to understand for anyone who goes and looks at it.
yes,
We have a link to the law on our website. We have an entire page on mental health consent facts. Stop by our
Okay.
website and check it out. You can also Google Pennsylvania Act 65 of 2020. Super simple, easy to understand law. The problem, however, is misinterpretation, misunderstanding of the law. And this has been going on since Act 65 of 2020 was written and released in an attempt to fix the misunderstanding of the previous law, which was almost exactly the same. Act 147 was the same as this, that just allowing children to have the right to consent to treatment, and somehow that got mixed up. So the law is great. It's simple. It's easy to understand. There's, for people who are looking to understand it, why they don't, I have no idea. But the law is great. It's just misunderstanding of the law. If you've been in a situation and you've had a problem with it, by all means reach out to us, and we'll help you reach out to the state so that they understand the impact the misunderstanding or refusal to follow the law causes. Pearl, did you want to say something? I see you hopped in.
Well, there was one, I've had 2 to 3 families that, there's a divorce custody situation, and that there's, they're just paranoid, and they're very, I can't do this without this person, and without dad consent. And so letting them know that, yes, you can, but it's almost like they don't believe me until I physically give them paperwork from that say Pennsylvania government or something. They don't believe me. So again, it is a matter of just education, but constant reminders.
Yeah. I get that people say, oh, we have it written into our divorce agreement that we have to agree to mental health treatment. You have it written into your divorce agreement that you both have to agree to all mental health treatment. I find that really, really hard to believe. But at some point, again, that got corrupt, thinking that just for mental health treatment. Kind of think about it. If there was a crisis and your child broke a bone, would you have to wait at home with your child suffering until you got permission from another parent? So the way the law is written, always assuming there's 3 parties. There's maybe a mom, a dad, and a child, and that could be in whatever form it takes. Whether you're married, you're not married, you're whatever. As of those 3 people likely to be in this situation, only one has to consent to mental health treatment. It doesn't matter which one of them, but when one person consents to mental health treatment, it doesn't matter if you're married, if you're divorced, if you've never been married, it does not matter. One person agrees to treatment, treatment begins. Period.